Hello, welcome back for another episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm here with Rish Goswami. He is the compliance manager at AWS, and I am very excited today to chat with him about biometrics data hacking. Welcome to the podcast, Rish. So, I've got a couple of questions for you around biometrics data hacking, but I thought first we should start from the beginning, which would be biometrics data in general. What is that? I guess, how is it being stored? And is it correct to my assumptions that it's just a retina scan, a face ID, a fingerprint? Can you say more around that?
Biometrics, we can think of it as a whole ecosystem of a lot of data points: your height, your weight, your personal demographic, your DNA, your iris scan, your fingerprint scan, anything that is very unique to you as a person. Your voice. So all these things that cannot be replicated. I mean, they can be now. We will find out. They can be, but they are very unique to you. It's not like a password that you can just change every 3 months. It's something that you're born with, and so these all aspects of us as a person constitutes a biometric data print, and we can uniquely identify a person using them.
Okay, but how is that actually being stored? What happens when I unlock my phone with my face? Is that a sequence of numbers or something?
Yes. So there are a lot of use cases, and let's talk about the use cases. The use case that you presented was our cell phone devices. When, for example, if you have an iPhone or these things, Android too, there is facial recognition that is being used. There are different technologies that are being used. For example, iPhones are Apple is really an industry leader in this aspect, as far as I know, where they use an actual 3D map of your face to generate a kind of a 3D structure on their local chip on the phone. And they use that to match it, match whoever is trying to unlock the phone. And if it matches, it unlocks the phone. If it doesn't matches, it'll ask you to do another way of authentication, which will be a PIN code or something. Now, this data, facial data, is typically stored as encrypted data. And after a lot of iterations, now it's being stored on locally on our devices. There are secure separate chips. I think A15 Bionic chip was the first one, or A14. I'm not entirely sure. Was the first Apple chip that came out. It was specially designed for storing, processing, and securing biometric information locally on the device. Before that, it was being stored in the iCloud interface that Apple still has, and there were some issues and some concerns raised by the cybersecurity community and by a lot of folks. So they have moved to a more secure environment, and the nature of this technology is as such it changes so much that we'll be seeing something else in the near future as well. This will also be broken into soon.
Yeah, for sure. And what about, I guess, in a B2B sense, and allowing their users to log into information or into their systems via their biometrics data? Where are they storing that information? Is that a
So
thing?
it is. It is.
Okay.
However, businesses mostly rely on username passwords, the good old security structure. But there are a lot of use cases where, for example, if a business has a lot of employees out in the field and they need to access data, access live reports, so they do offer ways to do that via fingerprint scan, via facial scan. And all of that is being processed, stored in SaaS environment, in clouds, as we say. So these are huge databases, data centers around the globe. But due to a lot of regulations, they are usually within your geographical area. If you're in US, it'll be stored within the US boundaries. If you're in Canada, it can be stored between Canada and US and so forth. So in that sense, a lot of that data, I would say more than 90 to 95% of the data is being stored in the SaaS, in the cloud environment. And whenever a employee or tries to authenticate to that device, they go ahead, use their fingerprint, or use some kind of authentication to log into that database. It will confirm that with the SaaS environment, the database in the backend, to authenticate that user.
Right. And I don't know, I guess I was envisioning it being like the movies and the CIA when they like enter the door with their retina scan. But I've never done that in
It
in a
does work
company
like
that I've
that.
worked at.
It does
Okay.
work like that. So, and it has been a very good security control for data centers. I have various experiences in managing and working in a variety of data centers locally based in Vancouver, where I am, and across US as well. A lot of these data centers have layered security, and one of the points is biometric authentication. So there's literally a device which will scan your retina. It's either the right or the left one. It's called the iris scan, and then your voice match as well. So
Oh,
oh yeah, so it is like that. It's not that as fancy. You can see like a beam of ray shining, but it's that's the only part missing. Other than that, it looks exactly like the movies. But obviously in movies they kind of blow it out of proportions quite a bit. But those security controls are in place
okay.
in a very secure environment.
Yeah, and I guess my other question was going to be, is that a safe way of authenticating? But you kind of answered my question in that it's a layered approach and it has to be, right? It can't be
It
the be all
has to
end
be.
all.
It has to be. It has to be. And that also is a evolving word. We started this journey with internet when internet just exploded late 80s, early 90s, to being a thing, and we didn't realize the scale of it. We still don't actually, in a lot of sense. But securing that information needs a lot of layers. We need physical security. We need authentication security. We need data layer security. We need the data after that to be encrypted. So even after all these controls, somebody can get access to that precious data that we're trying to save for the customer. And we need to ensure that also gets secured with various layers, encryption in transit, at rest, and then after the processing of that data is done, we need to ensure that data gets dealt with accordingly. It might be retention timelines. We let go of the data, we delete the data, give it back to the customer, and so forth.
Right. So I want to get to my real question, which is how do people hack biometrics data? Because surely that part is not like the movies where they're stealing someone's eyeball and holding it up to the camera. Well, how do they get access to that information?
I would, I mean, I would not want to see that happen, at least in my lifetime. But the 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 word hacking is really um, a, a very vague term and comprised essentially of data leak, data release, and a lot of threat actors. It might be a unhappy employee within your company. Just go ahead and just releasing the data to an external source. It might be regular attacks. It might be a vulnerability in a new service that you just released, and the somebody who has a malpractice go ahead and accesses that utilizes that vulnerability and access the data. Now, this all can be constituted as hacking that data. Um, on the other hand, companies are actively involved in buying and selling all this data as well. And
Really?
companies to companies also, because it's such a competitive environment, for example, pharmaceutical industries, AI. All we need is data to train the AI models. And there are legit ways to go about it. You can go and have data suppliers, data brokers who go ahead and provide you with millions and millions of records of data legitimately obtained by customers. But there's a darker side to it as well, where companies are competing to each other for this humongous amount of data to train their AI and MLM models. And for that, they do compete with each other, and they do employ dark sides to kind of either hamper their competition's ability in their operations or just enhance their own operations. One of the quick example that I can give you is the pharmaceutical industries. There was a company named, and this might be a few years old, maybe 2017, 2018 timeframe, GlaxoSmithKline. It came out in a report that it was using DNA of over 7 to 6 million people, which was originally owned by the 23andMe database, you know,
Oh.
to develop new drugs. So, we send cheek swabs to all these companies. Hey, I want to find out what my ancestry is at 23andMe. And all they had all this database. They eventually they had partnership, or they were bought by GlaxoSmithKline. I'm not exactly how, but they had access to like almost 6 million people's data, and they used that data. They had height, weight, what your ethnicity, and they used all of that to develop new drugs. So essentially, those 6 million people never knew about it, that the data has been used
Wow.
this way. So companies do that too, and in a lot of cases, which is under the rugs and very prevalent in the cybersecurity world as well, companies will go ahead and get data like using malicious actors or using from other companies, and essentially hamper others' operations. So it's a very interesting world.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember that jogs my memory of something, a headline that I read ages ago that I can't actually remember the proper story of. So hopefully, maybe you know, but something about NordVPN finding on the dark web a bunch of fingerprint scans or something that people were
It's
trading around.
it's very like that was the instant that came in light. But you hear all these news reports published by researchers that there's so much data that is being floating out there. So when it all started, the business of tracking us around the internet, it was essentially done to, hey, we as normal day-to-day people were okay with it, like, hey, track my data because I'm going to get a few discounts in return. If I provide my data, I'll get this coupon, or I will get free wi-fi in the mall, just if it's okay if you track my phone and what I'm doing on the phone. um, but that has in turn given rise to this industry of data brokerage, which is a multi-billion dollar industry around the globe. And not just small companies, big players like Facebook, Google, Amazon, all these new startups. They are massively utilizing this data to run their operations.
Hmm.
Um, each app that we tap, each click we do creates like a behavior pattern. And these days, or not these days, been in a practice for a few years, we call in our banks and we have to authenticate via our voice. That's also your biometric data. The company has it. Now, we are okay providing that because we're getting the convenience of bypassing the automated AI on the phone, and we can just talk to a customer rep right away once our voice is authenticated. But when this data gets compromised, and that will be linked with other information of us out there, it can, and if it gets into the wrong hands, it can lead into a lot of things, like price of your healthcare insurance will go up. And we already know a lot of insurance companies are gathering these data points on, hey, your phone showed you just left a party on a Friday night. in this area where there were five pubs or downtown. And on the way back, you got into a fender bender. So we're not going to cover it because our tracking shows you were probably intoxicated. Yeah,
Wow.
they will deny your claims. So they're essentially tracking your geolocation, your biometrics, and they will use that. And and they do. They have been do insurance companies have been doing that for God knows, like more than 10 years at this point.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yes, yeah. So it can also affect your university admissions. Hey, so like if a company if a university has a specific quota that they need to fill, they can target those folks and there's a chance or a risk of legitimate uh, uh, students who deserve those seats or the admission be left out in the field. So and we've also seen another major instance on who will win the elections. So, like we all know about Cambridge Analytica instance that
Mm-hmm.
happened in the last election cycle. Essentially, they were assigned by one of the campaign teams to go out and influence a large number of people. So they started pushing ads on Facebook by creating fake accounts and gathering all the information data that they could get that they could via data brokers, and they created profiles on I don't know millions of Americans, and they targeted ads, and they almost swayed the election. They did. So it is. I mean, there are real world consequences to this data being landing in um, gray hands or wrong hands, bad malpractice users, and then they utilize this data.
Yeah. Honestly, what comes to mind when you say this is colonial pipeline kind of hacking, infrastructure hacking, where maybe bad actors are targeting a very specific individual at a company or a few specific individuals at a company to try and gain access that way. Whether it's like a CISO or a CEO of an industrial company of some sort, and following them, using that data to understand their patterns to try and get infiltration into their systems, the people with admin rights or whatever, to get access to bigger industrial hacking is horrifying.
I mean, there's still a reason that I still have a sticky on my webcam. I mean, I
Yeah.
do trust it. I do close, like, if there is no slider on my webcam, I'll have a sticky on the webcam. There is
Yeah.
still a reason for that. And that really ties into whoever has access. Obviously, they are higher targets of
Hmm.
these attacks because they have access to databases, to systems who have stored all this data. So they are highly targeted positions in the industry. But I mean, this data is there. It's being used. It started being used for legit, helpful reasons. Now it's being used to sway massive amounts of people's focus, attention to a specific thing. And now it's being used to track a lot of folks, not you as a person, but a group of people they can track, and then who knows what next.
Can it track individuals as people?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'll give you a quick example, and this is not even a recent example. In 2015, and this happened in Hong Kong, which has, I think, the second highest number of cameras in the world. So people were in the rush hour standing on the bus stop, and there's huge billboards behind them for advertisements. There's LCD windows, and all of a sudden they see their own portraits showing as wanted criminals, and they're waiting, and they're like, "Oh, why is my photo there?" And it says wanted. So what actually happened? This was a ad gimmick by an ad agency called Olive and Meyer, something like that. What they did, they used the cigarette butts that these folks were throwing on the ground as littering, and they had biometrics on them, their saliva, their fingerprints, and they collected them over the past few weeks. And they use software to generate 3D prints or 3D facial scans of these folks. And whenever these folks came again in that specific area at the bus stop, the camera said, okay, this person is here, right there. Their photo was right behind us as wanted. So,
What?
and it was like yes, this happened in 2015. You can Google it. And this is 2015 we're talking about, almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. So, the software, the capability is there, it's being used. But this was done with a good intention of like, hey, don't litter. I mean, there are fines, but that good intention is long passed on. It's being used to sway elections. It's being used for extremely, extremely bad things like ethnic cleansing in Southeast Asia. So data compromise, it just keeps moving forward, and we are sharing more than ever data that we have been sharing in the past to internet companies, which I think is a way of life. I don't think there's a way out of it, but
Yeah. So how do people and companies then protect themselves against biometric data hacking?
I believe I believe also that this generation that is coming is extremely tech savvy. We at least are aware of the problem or getting aware of the problem, or hey, we only should share as much. And the the best applicable control to this issue becoming a really rampant problem is regulations. That's the first step. We need to have lawmakers uh, establish strong controls, not just locally, not just federally. There has to be a worldwide set of frameworks for biological data in specificity, so that no national law can be exempt from it. Just like there is Declaration of Human Rights, uh, we should have declaration of privacy and biological data as well. There should be a charter, standard framework on what companies can collect, what they can store, how to store it, how to keep updating with new incoming technologies. Like there used to, we started with TLS 1.0 for encryption in transit. Now we're at TLS 1.3. If the regulation doesn't catch us up and mandates the companies to do TLS 1.3, the companies, because we cannot blame the organization as well. Their main aim is to make money. So, and to keep updating with the technology takes more training for employees, hiring more specialists, keeping updated costs money.
Right.
So wherever companies can cut corners, stay with the regulations, they will. So we need to have regulations in place and those regulations need to be updated with the fast-paced technology, which is
Mhm.
not happening.
So are there no data regulations for biometrics data today at all?
There are,
Okay.
but it's all scattered. If we're
Yeah.
talking about U.S. specifically, each state, no, forget about state.
Right.
Each city is coming up with their own state. Like I know Portland, Oregon, banned um, processing of biometric data, biological data in all public schools or in all public offices, city offices, public schools, and they have also there's a bill in the house as well in Portland in their local legislative assembly to do that, to enforce private companies to do that too. But it's all scattered, right? A lot of states, California has some of the most strictest ones. New York has biometric law as well, but it's pretty relaxed in a lot of other states. So there's no one standard single source of truth. Everybody's trying to deal with it the same in their own sense, uh, which I believe is not the best way to go about it. We should only have, but just like GDPR came along, it was a single source of truth, at least for 2 years, for Europe, across Europe. That's
Yeah.
privacy law. It's established a really good base for privacy rights for citizens of EU. So we need something like that, federal level in US and Canada for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All
Yes.
right. Well, hopefully there's a certified professional out there listening to this that's going to tackle that problem because that sounds absolutely terrifying.
I know and it's been happening for the longest time. It's just how much exposed are you to this world of
Yeah.
privacy and data brokerage and data leakage? Like there was just a humongous, like a 8 billion records leaked by a major data processing data brokerage. It's based in Argentina, I believe, but they are a major U.S. firm. I wish I could name them, but they're headquartered in Argentina, so they're exempt from a lot of laws, but they're
Hmm.
heavily operating in the U.S. So businesses try to go around the laws, find loopholes. They lobby to ensure all these bills are delayed as long as possible, or they're changed in such a way by the time they become an actual law that they're pretty much toothless dragons at this
Yeah.
point.
I
Um,
mean that's also why we have to have these discussions too, because to your point
yes.
about us becoming more tech savvy, I actually don't know if that's true on a general population size of everybody being wary of biometrics data, because I think a lot of people are just like, yeah, it's safe because it's my fingerprint, right?
I do hope that changes. I when I said tech savvy, I meant like, hey, our previous generation didn't even like has touchscreen phones, but they
Yeah.
don't essentially know how to essentially use it. They have Facebook, but they don't know what's real, what's not, what's AI generated, what's not. Like
Yeah.
I keep getting WhatsApp messages from my parents. I keep getting Facebook forwards, and I'm like, guys, this is not real. Stop following those things. So even uh, and then I like to think I'm a bit informed in this world. My parents myself, I struggle to kind of bring them up to speed of what's happening around them. So hopefully this changes with the next generation. I believe they like to have um, the next generation of lawmakers accountable, hold them accountable to actions, demand responsibility for their own information out there
Yeah.
because there's so much. And another instance that comes to mind was I think it was again it was a couple of years ago when Samsung was tracking and recording audio on their TVs of everybody in their house and they're sending it non-encrypted over the internet. And
No.
it was leaked. It was leaked by a hacker group, and they were like, "We don't want this data, but Samsung, what are you doing? You are a
Yeah.
juggernaut
Even
when
the
it comes."
hacker group was like, we don't even need this, but like what's going on?
I know, and
Ah!
I mean, Samsung's such a big juggernaut, and a flub like that. Everybody had Samsung TVs, who had Samsung TV in their home. Their voice was recorded without them knowing, and it's being sent unencrypted over the internet. It was just baffles me. But I believe we need to do better,
For
like
sure.
in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, yeah, for sure. Okay, well, thank you so much, Reach, for joining the podcast. That was super helpful for me and hopefully everyone else to be aware and be wary and protect data both on an individual level and a business level. So, thank you so much. If we want to find you and what you're working on online, where can we look?
Uh, First of all, thank you very much, Amy, as well. I'm always on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to find me, to connect. I love to talk. I love to talk to folks. I love to talk to people. So reach out. Just say hi, drop a hi, or just wave. I'll be there to chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much.